Welcome to the Trumpet of the last few days.
I'm Robert Farrar.
And I'm Joshua Farrar.
Yay, latency.
As we look upon our world events that are collapsing around, as the struggle between those who would oppress society with their communist dictates and their mindless obligatory lockdowns and assaults on world freedom, we take and we look now down south. Robert, would you like to comment on Brazil?
Yes. Brazil is quite an interesting situation right now. Because, well, around the time that President Trump got elected, there was a new leader in Brazil as well. His name is Bolsonaro. And he has been attacked and hammered by the commies since he got in. And I say that for a reason. Partially because I know a commie who has bashed him ever since he got in, and partially because he has literally been fighting the Communist Party in his country. And right now, he's butting heads with his own Supreme Court. 10 out of the 11 of which are members of the Communist Party. the Supreme the Supreme Court in Brazil doesn't act like the Supreme Court in the United States. The Supreme Court of Brazil acts as sort of a pseudo legislator that also does real criminal trials. The last two leaders before Bolsonaro were ousted for corruption. The first of which was the head of the Communist Party. You can already see where that might be going. The head of the Communist Party ousted for corruption, so he goes up for trial in front of the Supreme Court. They dropped the case just recently.
You'd think that would be a good enough reason to oust their entire Supreme Court for corruption.
Yes, you'd think it would be. But, seeing as they wield a lot of power in the politics of Brazil, they're having. There's a fight right now between Bolsonaro, the executive, and the judicial. So he is doing what smart politicians do, and he's whipping up the people of Brazil against the Supreme Court. So much so that the world's largest anti communist protest just happened in Rio, with about 150,000 people in attendance. Now, Bolsonaro has been making some interesting statements because he's up for re-election and he knows what he's taken a very anti-corruption stance and a very anti-crime stance. Now, anyone who knows anything about Robert Kennedy knows what that can lead to. And Bolsonaro is well aware of the corruption in his country. So, he's made statements like there's only three ways that this can end. I'll be in jail, I'll be dead, or I'll be reelected.
Well, as
It's
the
combat right now in
Democrats have,
Brazil.
as the Democrats have shown, just because you assassinate someone doesn't mean that you stay in jail. After all, they're trying to turn loose Sirhan, which shot Robert Kennedy.
Cold-blooded murder. Everyone saw it. The man should have gotten the chair. But But yeah, it's war in
But
Brazil.
he has
The
mob
executive
ties.
against the
So,
judicial.
have you ever noticed how much
So
power
it's
the
gonna be
mob
fun.
seems to wield in communist countries?
Oh, an enormous amount.
Well, they basically take over.
They
It
have
gets
to
to the point
because
you
the
can't tell
people
the
can't
difference between
actually
the
rely
mob
on
and the
their government
politicians.
to protect them.
But they can't rely on the mob
They
to
can't
protect
rely
them.
on the mob to protect them, no. But think about it this way, right? Who would you rather trust with public security? Some faceless government drones that are completely corrupt and don't do anything, or homegrown local boys who are equally corrupt but you can at least talk to their families? That's how the mob
Just
gets
know,
power
if you
right
step
there.
out of line, they'll
Well,
kill
it's
yours.
you're right. That is how the mob gets power. And a lot of the times the mobsters are actually pretty nice guys. At least so I've been told by
But
people who knew some of
Individually, I'm
one
sure.
one interest one interesting thing about what's going on in Brazil right now is that as part of his anti-crime push, Bolsonaro is pushing to arm the populace.
That's a good move.
He's going full on American. It is a good move, but you better believe that it's hated by the politicians. The mayor of Sao Paulo is pushing for his resignation. And for those who don't know, Sao Paulo is the largest city in Brazil, not Rio de Janeiro.
San Paulo has one of the highest crime rates in the world.
So does Rio. Both of those cities, they're cesspits.
Yeah, but and it's not nothing new. They've been that way for decades. But then again,
But the
Chicago, Baltimore, or New York, same way.
but the idea of
LA.
Brazil becoming the South American United States just fascinates me.
Well, my brief stay in Brazil was quite pleasant. Granted, I was
You
only there
didn't
for
go to
like a
the
Well,
week.
favelas though. So
Oh,
with the
I
power
stayed in
the
a
Communist
place.
Party has,
I don't remember where I stayed. I know it like loosely translates to Port of the Chicken, Porto de something or other, but I don't remember.
de pollo,
No, no, it wasn't the standard one. It was a
Porto de
fancier
pollo.
word. It was a synonym.
oh, ooh,
Yeah,
fancy.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Foreign
I think it
cinema.
started with like a G or something. I can't remember.
Porto de Gallo.
That may have been it. Then again, it's not Spanish. It's
The
Portuguese, so it's
guy who's
slightly different.
speaking Spanish. Yeah, yeah, it is.
That's true.
It's not.
I can
It's
only
not
give you the
Spanish.
Spanish equivalent.
It was a longer word.
Well,
Spanish.
you know, pico de
Portuguese.
gallo means chicken head, chicken beak, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me
But
let's see. Brazil port.
But yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle, and I won't be surprised if Bolsonaro loses and ends up dead or in jail. That's what happens to opponents of the Communist Party. And these
Porto
Supreme
de
Court
Galinhas.
justices are known for Yes.
yeah, I
Yeah.
could see the comparison.
The NH in Portuguese makes a nia
Now,
sound.
They had a lot of chicken statues around. In fact, here's a really way off topic thing. While walking around town, I was with this other guy who was playing Pokemon Go because he never grew up. But regardless, he was trying to catch the South American specific one that you can only because there's like a single Pokemon in every continent that you can only catch in that continent, and he was going for the one in South America, and we went way out of the area we were supposed to into the the rundown third world houses portions,
Yeah,
um, and
the favelas.
yeah, we actually ran into this chicken, this actual legitimate chicken, skinniest chicken I ever saw, but it looked identical to the minstrel chicken from Disney's Robin Hood, the animated one. Completely identical.
The one, the one played by Roger Miller.
Yes, the one played by Roger Miller.
Yeah.
Now that, oh, here's a spicy take. The spaghetti in Brazil was better than spaghetti from Italy. Don't at me.
Adam, do it.
They can't. I
But
don't have a Twitter.
the,
Well,
the the Supreme Court of Brazil has a reputation for overstepping its bounds. Aside from dropping the charges against a leader charged for corruption, not even going to trial, not even seeing the evidence, dropping it. But there was a member of the Supreme Court who, when a website criticized them, they shut the website down.
typical
And
communist
it's
stuff.
gotten to the point, the tensions are so high that Bolsonaro has actually said that he will no longer recognize the Supreme Court.
Well, speaking of communists and information control, did you hear about the 20,000 books that were burned in Canada across several different universities?
No, I did not.
No, I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, there was quite a wave of condemnation going toward those guys for burning a lot of books for no good reason other than they politically
Okay.
disagreed with them.
Were they Locke and Smith and other books on freedom,
I don't know the specifics.
pain?
I don't know which specific books they were going. It was 20,000 books
I'm
for crying
sure.
out loud.
I'm sure all of those would be.
On again.
Well,
So there's burning of
speaking of
20,000
Canada,
books. To re-
I may have overshot it. I just pulled it up and it looks like it was 5,000. But yeah.
okay.
5,000. Okay.
Still burning books to reconcile with the Indians when it was the Catholic Church and the government that was responsible for it, not everybody.
Mostly the government. Because they mandated that they would go to these Catholic schools.
Yeah. Now, I grant you, there's been this is also why they had so many church burning.
Which, remember, an
'Cause they
eye for
blame
an eye
all.
is not the right way.
Oh, an eye for an eye, and everybody's blind.
No.
But even so, even if you're
Just
going to
everyone
blame
loses
the
depth
Catholic
perception.
Church, that doesn't. If you're going, even if you're going to blame the Catholic Church, you don't burn all churches. But they were supporting the burning of churches as being that these were Catholic schools. So of course it's okay to attack every church
Now,
according to the government,
Oh.
but the government's still the ones that put them in the schools.
on a side note, majorly distracting here because until I get this out, I'm going to be thinking about it the rest of the episode. Who on earth came up with that eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind? Did they just think that everyone in the
God.
world was a cyclops? That everyone only had one eye? Losing a
That's
single
No,
true,
eye
you
does
you
by
not
the
leave
way.
you
you
blind.
you. I I take your eye, you take my eye, then I take your eye, then you take my eye.
Yeah, but that's not an eye for an eye.
That's the escalation of warfare.
That's the escalation of violence. That has, in fact, the Bible was very very specific when it was talking about an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That in the Old Testament specifically, it was not saying that you must get revenge. It was putting a limit to the amount of revenge you can seek. If someone
Yes,
took
it
an eye
was.
from you, you can do no more than take one eye from them. You take what was taken from you,
Hmm.
no more. Well, no more. That's the point. You don't escalate it.
Well,
That's what it was
think
saying.
about other early legal systems. Think about other early legal systems of the time. You've got Hammurabi's code, and in that, depending on what class you were, there was a radical payment you had to pay if you wronged someone. If you were of the peasant class and you wronged a noble, that could cost you your life,
Is
even
it
if you did a
bad?
minor offense.
Is it bad that I think of that guy not as Hammurabi, but as Hammurabi? I know full well
Wrong
it's
language, but
mispronouncing it egregiously. I know full well that I am insulting him, his culture, and all of his potential descendants, but I don't care because I think it's pretty funny. Hammurabi.
but the point is, compared to other legal systems, the Jewish law was really fair. It put
Yeah,
limits.
it
It didn't
was.
put anyone above someone else. If you knocked out, if you took out the eye of the king, well, okay, that might be a little bit more because he was, put in that place by God Himself, and you didn't touch the person that God put in place. But
Thou
if you
shalt
put
not
out the
touch
eye of a
God's
noble,
anointed.
To be
the
fair,
noble could
the
put
the
out
eye
your
for
eye
an
and
eye
no more.
thing was before was while God was still telling them, "Hey, you don't really need a king." It's before he said, "Fine, if you
It's
want
true.
it so bad, deal with it."
Well, but the eye for an eye still existed when they had the kings.
True,
It didn't go
but it
away. The
still
law
predated them.
wasn't gone. Yes, it did. And but even then, you still didn't touch God's anointed. You
I,
didn't touch the judge.
I still don't. I still have a hard time mentally reconciling the fact that they actually wanted a king.
Well, okay. In Russia right now, there's a huge move to go back to the monarchy,
Yeah, I don't understand that either.
and the reason for there is a reason for that. They What happened after they lost the monarchy is that they went to communism. So they view the loss of the monarchy as the beginning of the downfall of Russia. So they'd rather, and they knew that the monarchy was terrible. They knew it. They were very very well aware of it, but they knew it was better than communism. So there's a huge push to just bring it back because it's better than what they've got.
Oh, maybe they can finally dig up Anastasia after all these years.
They already did.
Did they
Well,
finally
they
find her?
have to dig her up.
Mhm.
They don't know.
They did a series of tests on a group of bodies and actually accounted for every one of the royal family, a, and verified through DNA that they are the royal family. They're all dead.
I figured she probably was, which is part of the reason why I said dig up in the first place. But I don't know. Part of me liked the idea of her being a Disney princess fighting off against a necromancer raised from the dead Rasputin, because that was funny. Way over the top. I don't remember where that cartoon came from, but it was entertaining.
It came from Disney. If I remember right, it's one of the forgotten Disney movies.
Well, you know Rasputin. They shot him and shot him and shot him trying to kill him.
Yeah, he just wouldn't stay dead.
They shot him and poisoned him and threw him in a river, and
Hmm.
they did eventually get him though.
They did eventually get him, yeah. He was a hard person to kill. Speaking about corrupt politicians, uh, recently the, the populace of Canada has started throwing rocks at Trudeau whenever they see him.
That'll really rock his
And that's
world.
that's very upsetting. That's very upsetting to the Canadian mindset that someone threw some gravel at a politician and dared call him such
Oh
words
yeah,
as corrupt.
But he is
How
corrupt.
dare you?
He's always
We don't
been
they don't
corrupt.
they don't do that in Canadian politics. Doesn't matter. They don't do that in Canadian politics. You don't dare call a politician corrupt. That's just un-Canadian. That's that's too much like
but it's
those
okay to
filthy
take and egg
Americans.
the opposition. Yes, it is too much like us
Yeah,
filthy
that's not
Americans.
assault. He wasn't afraid for his life, but some gravel, that's terrifying.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
that
it
I'm
was
actually
okay to
condoning
egg your
either one.
opponent though. It's okay to egg your opponent because he wasn't in fear of his life. So, despite the fact it's still assault under the law, that's okay.
Yeah, it's not like they're not,
But gravel,
you know, both assault.
that's trying to kill someone.
Oh, by the way, Robert,
That's
could you
like
adjust
that's
your
like
mic a
having the
bit
Rona.
because you keep breathing into it accidentally?
That's like having the Rona and then coughing on them. You're trying to get that person killed.
To be fair, not about the coughing thing. This is a minor step beyond that. Remember that fad that where people would go into grocery stores, open up ice cream containers, lick them, and then put them back in?
No, I don't.
I remember the incidences of it. I didn't know it was a fad.
It was a bit of a fad. Those people should be taken out and shot.
Ruining perfectly good ice cream.
Whoa.
Yeah, those
That's
people who grown adults doing that proves they are incapable of adapting to society and should be put down like a rabid dog.
yeah, no.
We're taking a
But
minor approach to the punishments, so that's the least that can be done, right?
Yes, of course, of course.
next we're gonna
The
burn the
absolute
bodies, scatter
most
the ash.
is chaining them to the back of a car and dragging them face first through the streets.
All right, Mad
Now,
Max.
now we know what happened when that was done in Texas.
What, did they live?
No, no, they didn't live.
It was in
But
Jasper,
um,
Texas. They dragged through the streets till
Jasper,
they died.
Texas
Yeah.
has had a bad reputation ever since. It
Ah.
only happened once.
It only
Well, then
happened.
maybe they just need a few more
But yeah, it
instances
has
to
kind of
dilute the pool a bit. Once it's more common, it won't seem like one murder is a tragedy. 1,000 murders is a statistic.
Yeah, but when you have that statistic attached to a town of what 2,000 people,
It's not a
Or
bad
less,
statistic
yeah.
attached to a town. It's once it becomes a statistic, it will no longer be a bad stigma attached to the town.
yeah. But the whole point is
Kind of like
once you
Baltimore.
kill enough people,
Yes,
to make
like
it a
Baltimore.
statistic,
Exactly
you don't
like
have
Baltimore.
that town anymore. Baltimore's, you know, Chicago, New York, L.A., all of them, the crime rates skyrocketed.
That's not surprising.
The murder rate skyrocketed. But speaking of unpopular politicians, Trudeau's not the only one being mocked and scorned, even if it is surprising because of how un-Canadian it is.
I don't think it's as un-Canadian as you
About
think. Having
oh, I
dealt
know. I'm
having
making
dealt with a lot of Canadians, this whole hyper friendly, always saying sorry culture that they liked everyone to think they have is absolute BS. It doesn't exist.
Oh, I know it is. I know it is. I'm actually making fun of a radio program that called it un-Canadian. But in America, it's not uncommon. It's not un-American to make fun of or bash politicians at all. In fact, they've even gone so far as to break the American taboo of keeping politics out of sports, which is interesting when it comes to Joe Biden
Since when
because
do they
the
ever have a taboo
crowd
against keeping politics out of sports? Whatever happened to this whole kneeling
when
for
it comes
the
the
anthem thing? There is
the
no taboo against.
crowds have
Yeah,
always the,
Oh, the crowds have
the
always hated it.
crowds have always hated it.
The crowds will always hate it because
But
people
this
don't
time
go to be
this
entertained
time
to be reminded of what they're trying to forget for an hour a day.
this time it was the crowds. This time it was the crowds. About 6 different stadiums shouting F Joe
and
Biden. In college football, about 6 stadiums. That's what they were chanting.
Considering the crowd for college sports, that's a bit surprising.
Exactly. It is surprising. It's very surprising. He's that unpopular. And a lot of it's because of how he's been handling Afghanistan, somewhat how he's been
thing about you figure
handling Hurricane Ida.
he,
I don't know about
he
that one.
he's that unpopular. Oh, they had more people die in New York over Hurricane Ida than those that died in Louisiana when it hit.
Oh, I was just making a joke about Ida.
People were that, but
And Joe Biden
Ida
he
took
just
and
kind of sat there, and
drowned
then eventually
more
started visiting
people
places.
in New York than
I have never heard that bug before.
Neither have I. It's really interesting.
Well, Dad's obviously locked up
It
already.
sounds like
Well,
one of
no,
those things that
it's
you
not.
twist and go back.
It does kinda, yeah.
It sounds like one of those things that you.
Or you remember that old hand
I don't
buzzer I
even
used
hear
to
it.
have, where you would wind it and it
Yeah.
would buzz once you shook hands with someone?
I, s- I think it's
Yeah.
still in your box of stuff.
Somewhere in there, yeah. I mean, all it did was really make a noise,
But
but
Bi- but Biden's popularity
And spin in your
has
hand.
Yeah.
tanked. And you know how polls are always skewed to the left, right?
yeah,
Well, the polls currently have him around. I think it was 41% at the last measure.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So you've got to subtract at least 10 points from that to get a close monitor
10,
of how the
10 to
nation
20
actually views.
points.
He's well into Carter territory right now.
he's not the least popular president in history, but he's pretty close.
Well,
He's the least popular
president
president
in history,
in this
that's
soon in
really
the present.
Well, in recent history, yes. And this soon, I would agree as well.
Actually,
But he hasn't.
according to the polls, there were 2 presidents less popular than him this soon into the presidency. Donald Trump, because the polls are skewed, and Carter himself. So
What about the guy who
he's
died a
competing
month
with
into
Carter. He's
being
not
elected?
actually. That guy doesn't count. Also, he was really popular when he was elected.
Shouldn't
and then
be.
everything went wrong.
He's the
See,
reason why
that one
people
thing
run
about it.
for the presidency the way they do. He started this whole trend of actually running for
But
president rather than
he
being
he was
dignified.
really popular when he did run for president.
My point being is he's the one who turned it into a popularity contest. So if anything, he should be condemned for it
Yes.
rather than anything else.
Actually, yes and no. He turned it into the self-propagating popularity contest. Before that, they would pay other people to up their popularity.
That is true. But it was before that point. It was a
That's
major
actually
taboo to
Jefferson
be proclaiming yourself.
to run for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jefferson and Jefferson hired someone to smear Adams the whole time, and he actually ended up getting sued by that guy later. But
Well, yeah, that's where libel
Jefferson
comes from,
did.
isn't it?
Well, no, Jefferson got sued by the guy that he hired to smear at John Adams.
What for?
I don't know if he won the suit. Might have been breach of contract. I'm
You
not
probably breach a contract.
100% certain.
Ah.
Well,
But the point is,
the,
Joe
Biden
Biden.
can at least be thankful that the United States hasn't dropped to Lone Star Planet level. But yeah,
Oh my.
Where it's the honorable thing to assassinate your politician if they do something you don't like. Usually in an open gunfight. For those who haven't read The Lone Star
oh
Planet,
yeah, it always had to be.
I strongly advise it. It's actually a very entertaining read, even if it is just a ripoff of The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Well, he was the bravest of them all.
And yes, the the short story for The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance did come before The Lone Star Planet, but I still strongly advise reading The Lone Star Planet. It is a good story. It's not very long, and it comes across as though it's a satire of Texas culture, but at the same time it comes across as being very glorifying to Texas culture, which is very entertaining.
Well, a lot of satire is exactly that way, where they are at once mocking and celebrating the thing that the topic they're covering. A lot of the best satire is that way.
Case dismissed. Everybody die for cover.
But right now, if things continue, Joe Biden logically would be a pushover. It would be like running against Carter, where it's not even really a competition. Which means we
Do we
should
have a
be able
Reagan
to
to
have.
run against?
We have Donald Trump, and it's looking like he is going to run again. And remember, Donald Trump pushed a lot of Reagan's policies.
That's true.
But
And he did win the last election against him too.
yes, he did. But we should have a really good couple of litmus tests coming in 2022 and 2024 about how fair these elections really are. Because Carter lost in a landslide.
See, yeah, and see, I'm certain that they're going to fix the elections again. They're already talking
I'm still
about
waiting.
lockdown.
I'm still waiting on Biden's malaise, but I'm afraid he's already given it, which is really disappointing because this is really early in his term. For those who don't know, Carter's malaise was a speech given by President Carter toward the end of his term, and it basically spelled the end of his career in politics. What it was supposed to be addressing the energy crisis, energy crisis that was going on in the U.S. that was completely fabricated to begin with, and what it ended up being was him complaining that the American people weren't doing what he wanted them to do. Kind of like every single speech that Biden's given since he started.
Hmm. Well, one
And
thing
that doesn't
about
go over well with the American people.
well, Biden's already doesn't he have the misery index going again?
Yes, yes, actually he does. It's Carter's term redux.
But
I mean,
technically,
isn't that what the
Obama
whole
was
check your
Carter's term.
privilege thing was all about?
Maybe.
You don't have it as bad as that other guy, so you can't talk? Isn't that exactly what that whole thing is about?
A misery index.
Yeah.
Well, except that was used to promote
Thing about it
wokeism. This is
is
used to promote ousting a president.
when you take and you look at it, the Obama's policies were Carter's redux. This is taking it
Yeah,
and
well,
doubling down on it.
well, if you look at Obama's policies, it's really interesting. He managed to get very little of his agenda actually done because
Well, that's
very
because they were
early on in his
fighting
career,
fighting him the whole way.
well, no, not when he first got elected. He had a Democrat Congress, but they crashed the housing market first year in, and after that, he'd
Mhm.
lost so much momentum. He struggled to get anything done. The only thing he managed to get done was
He
Obamacare.
also crashed the oil industry
Which, of course, has happened again.
by crashing. Hmm.
Yeah,
Well, that's
yeah, it
because,
has, but not as bad
like I
maybe
said, Biden's
somehow
just
as it was
taken
during the Obama
Obama's
years.
policies and doubled down.
Well, and then you've got the Colonial Pipeline hack and Hurricane Ida all putting a squeeze on East Coast oil supply.
Hmm. Oh, Hurricane Ida took out a refinery in
Ooh,
Louisiana.
ooh, that's right. It shut down
So
all
you
of the
could say it was
refineries in
a storm
Louisiana,
of
but they,
refined tastes.
yes, this one tastes lovely. All that oil
They
and
they took and
steel.
they're saying that oh the the mayor of New York City was working real hard to pass off the responsibility for the deaths to the former governor.
And the current governor is just kind of riding the train like nobody can blame me about anything. And there's a lot of truth to that. She hasn't been in very long.
I don't even know who replaced Cuomo.
I don't remember her name.
Is it the attorney general? That's who they tend to pick in New York and to replace.
No, I was pretty sure it was the vice governor actually.
So
Okay.
while I was on a ship, there were these when pulling in and out of certain ports, we would see these offshore drilling stations here and there. Uh, and the way they look from a distance, or the way these ones individually looked, is as we were going in, we would always tell the people, you know, you weren't home until you saw the sea llamas. Because from a distance, they looked like a row of llamas standing out in the sea.
How do you know they
Have to
weren't
see the sea
vicuñas or
llamas.
guanacos?
What was that?
Come on. Why do they? How do you know they're not vicuñas or guanacos? Those are
They
Two
definitely
longer
look.
related to
necks.
They
llamas.
definitely looked more like llamas. Maybe alpacas.
Alpacas are so
Well,
small, though.
when you think about the fact that Biden has taken and cut off the leases to offshore drilling and the leases to drilling on government land and shut down the pipeline.
Why
It's
aren't
no
gas prices
wonder
higher
that
than they
we're
are?
having. They probably should be. I'm thankful they're
During the
not.
Obama
But
years, it was over three.
the
dur- During the Obama years, it was over $3 a gallon over here. It's just shy of that point right
it
now.
it was $4 and $5 a gallon in the West Coast,
I'm pretty sure
and they're over
it's still
$4 a
that high
gallon now.
now. So
The
why is it lower
average
here and
is
higher there?
$3 or something because we're in an oil producing state.
Yeah, make that oil.
But they they're having to truck the fuel around the country instead of relying on an
And
pipeline.
and there's a trucker shortage.
And there's a trucker shortage. But that's going to run up the cost.
Well, it's going to run up the
If you can
costs by a
rely
great
on,
deal. It's going to increase the amount of accidents and loss, which are inevitable in that sort of supply line.
Yeah, it's not like ramen
it's
where you
much
lose
worse
like
for the
$5
environment.
if you get a wreck.
Yeah. You after all, you get in a wreck because you're trucking around a whole load of oil to places that have to get them to survive, but you're low on truckers, so people are going way overtime. So you've got more accidents. People die. You lose a lot of oil, and then you've got to deal with lawsuits of all the people accidentally caught up in the wake of the crash. Injuries,
Now,
deaths.
Mm-hmm.
did anybody hear? So the unemployment benefits, the boosted unemployment benefits, were supposed to end on Labor Day. Did anybody hear if they managed to extend that or not?
I have no idea.
Because they just kind of seemed apathetic about it. The government did. It would be great if they failed.
I I heard someplace that they didn't, but I don't know.
Yeah, they're just kind of. It's just there's. I haven't heard hardly any news on it whatsoever.
Oh,
Also, though,
I didn't know what
speaking
day
of
of the
the
week it
government
was
failing,
until a couple hours ago.
speaking of the government just not acting, so the government just didn't act when the uh, eviction ban was supposed to run out, and so they unconstitutionally and unilaterally used the CDC to extend it. Now they just didn't act when the boosted unemployment benefits didn't what was supposed to run out. So I kind of wonder if they're just going to unilaterally extend those via some government agency.
Well, you know that
Well,
currently
it doesn't
speaking,
matter either
the
way.
Biden administration is being sued. The Biden administration is being
But
sued because they're these vaccine mandates. The vaccines they're giving aren't the ones that are approved by the FDA. Uh, because they didn't have enough of
Yeah,
those.
because only the Pfizer vaccine has been approved. Yeah,
or the Pfizer
And
but
not even all the Pfizer vaccine.
or Pfizer.
but what's happening when it comes to the government? They're it's like they're purposely trying to push everything off onto the executive intentionally, like the legislative branch is trying to get rid of its own power. And
Well,
at
that's
the same
because
time, we're almost
if
out of
they
money.
take the blame for it, then they're committing political suicide. At this point, they've got the perfect fall guy who's already unpopular that they can just keep loading all of the blame onto so they don't have to worry about it.
Well, we
This, and you can't have a dictator
and
unless you have centralized power.
we're on the verge of collapse right now. It's estimated that the U.S. for the first time will default on its loans next month if the debt ceiling's not raised because our payments are
which
higher
is
than what
a
we take in.
which would be a very good argument for secession.
There's
Yes, it would
already
be
enough good
if
arguments
we
for
didn't have a bunch
secession.
of spying states. And secession has the popularity of secession has been getting higher, but it's not high enough to get any jelly spine politicians on board.
Now, if Biden gets his way with his wanting to join a treaty with the UN to establish a national gun registry, that could tip the scales.
Done. Well, he'll have an immediate lawsuit.
The
So
na- oh yeah, because it would be violating the First Amendment. But they don't really care much about what the Constitution says. But what it would do is that
it would
every
be
firearm that was made in a foreign country would have to be registered.
technically they can do that though. They can register all the firearms, but they can't track them once they're in the states.
According to previous court cases, they can't register firearms in the state. There are some states that do it, it's illegal because it's to control the who has what and controlling the trying to limit to where dangerous as individuals who support freedom can't have firearms. Only communists can. And yes, I am stating my opinion, not the stats.
I've just figured out another. You know how I like to collect random skills? Never get enough to actually become an expert at it, but enough to know something about it. And how blacksmithing has been on the list for a while, and I just need land to actually to do it. Like the last one that I checked off the list was learning how to lockpick, but the next one that's been on the list for a while is blacksmithing. I think one after that will be gunsmithing, but I've got to become good at the one before I can start the other.
You know,
Modern
the
gunsmithing,
people
you
who
don't
came
have
out
to
with the
have any blacksmithing skills.
Do what?
yeah, sure you
Modern
don't have to have
gunsmithing, you don't
blacksmithing
have to have
skills
any
for modern
blacksmithing
ones.
skills at all.
Modern gunsmiths don't like to learn the skill for the sake of having the skill. They go for practicality, and I'm more interested in just having the skill.
The
It's why I learned how to make furniture in high school. I have no interest in making furniture. I have interest in knowing how to do it.
the the people that took and designed the Liberator or handgun that was it's 3D printed, has come out with a small lathe machine where you put in a billet of metal, and they've already programmed made the programs for the computer to where it'll make all the parts for a firearm. All you have to do is assemble it. A true ghost gun.
Which, by the way, is not illegal in the U.S.
Yet.
In spite of what Biden wanted, it's not illegal.
Yeah, but Biden was pushing to try to get the ghost guns banned. It didn't make it to the court challenge. And in fact, more states have gone constitutional carry.
Backlash.
It's getting to a point where the vast majority of red states are constitutional carry states.
Even Ohio. Of all places.
Carry on, my wayward son.
That was Kansas.
There'll be peace when you are done.
Well, uh, eh, I was watching this one. Well, it was a round table, kind of like this one, on the internet.
Did they
This
actually have a
one
table?
lady,
Because we just used the Atlantic
No.
Ocean.
no, it didn't
Let's
actually have a table.
later.
But they took and we're talking to this one lady from New York City, and she was talking about how she was uh, had been down in Dallas, and how everybody was so friendly and so polite, and how much superior Dallas was compared to New York.
Oh, you've brought this up before.
And
Because they all had guns, yeah.
yeah, they all had guns. That's what the other person says. Of course, they're polite because they've got guns. you, if you've got guns, you got a polite society.
An armed society is a polite society.
That's actually something that's commonly mentioned about where I work, because there is a very stratified rank structure. So a lot of the most, how do I put this? The most infuriating people to be around are the people who've forgotten, or worse, never knew what it was like to have to watch what you say because of consequences.
Yes. And you run into that everywhere, where people who never had to face the consequences of their actions.
The problem is that in a position with a stratified rank structure, is once they're at a certain rank, they don't have to worry about the consequences of what they say, because they won't be taken out back and given a quick lesson in common decency with a lead pipe.
Well, that's one of the reasons why the crime rate is up in the big cities, is because there is no consequence for their crime. They commit a crime and the courts just turn them loose.
Yeah.
No, and a lot of them haven't had to face consequences as children. They didn't get the switch.
Or if they did, it was
Spare the rods.
it was one of those fancy electronic ones.
Like I heard something really funny from someone from Arizona. They said they didn't get spanked growing up. I said, "Oh, I got the belt, I got the switch." And she said, "I'm from Arizona. We didn't even know what a switch was."
I suppose they would have to rely on a cactus.
Ooh, that would be rough.
Yeah, just wah. Don't you do that
I
anymore.
was just fixing that. You were talking about electronic spankings. I was beginning to ask you, are you in promoting the use of cattle prods on children?
No, I was talking about the Nintendo Switch, like the one that Robert has over there.
Give him a spanking in a
Oh, I
video
thought you
game.
were gonna.
Yeah, I'll put the smack down
I
on
thought
you.
you were talking about using a cattle prod or a stun gun on these kids.
No, I was referring to them
Hey,
being
listen.
spoiled rather than being spanked.
It's it's like that old it's like that old meme when your nephew asks you if you want to play Mario Kart. You're about to destroy a child. Are you sure you wish to proceed?
Can't go showing mercy on them, then they wouldn't learn how to play the game properly.
Exactly. You gotta lay the smack down on those youngins.
Actually, they'd probably beat me.
At Mario Kart, almost
Hey,
definitely. That game would make you sick.
Dad, Dad, I've already learned that playing games that you grew up with, you do lay the smack down on me.
And they're so simple.
It's like we were playing Frogger, which for those who don't know, the original Frogger was actually multiplayer, and it was competitive multiplayer. But Dad would just destroy me every single time.
How? Robert, you grew up playing Frogger.
Yeah, not the original Frogger. The original Frogger's way harder than the Frogger we grew
The original
up with.
Frogger the original Frogger is harder, yes. But it also doesn't force you to adapt to as many different scenarios.
Scenarios.
No, it doesn't. But the scenarios it has are grueling.
Just saying, in the
And
PlayStation
it's
1
not to say
version
that
of Frogger, that ice slide level, say,
oh, okay, that thing was just.
that is a case study in bad level design. That you don't do that.
It's a case study in sadomasochism, is what it is.
Well, some of the older games
But you know, most of the
are
other
still
levels
listed
in
as some of
that
the
game
hardest
were good.
games.
Well, that's
Oh,
because those
Ghouls and
games were
Ghosts.
designed to eat quarters. They were designed
Yeah.
to make you lose as unfairly as possible, so that you would as you'd put in more money and play again.
Yeah, but then there are the people who got good at it. Who put enough quarters in to actually get good at it.
Well, have you heard of Hollow Knight?
Yes.
So, for Dad's
based on
purposes,
Yes.
Hollow Knight is a relatively recent side-scrolling Metroidvania game. Metroidvania just means it has a large interconnected world where you pick up power-ups occasionally, and that gives you access to new parts of the map that you didn't previously have, new abilities and that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
Okay.
for,
Like
for-
Metroids.
exactly like Metroid and the original Castlevania,
Yeah.
which is why they're called Metroidvania games. But in this particular game, this guy modded the final boss called the Radiant, or at least I think it's the final boss, or it's one of the final bosses, if not an optional boss. Either way, it's supposedly the hardest boss in the game.
They have several endings.
But he modded the boss to be unbeatable as a joke, and then he released that on the internet. People have figured out how to beat it legitimately without cheats, despite the fact that the game itself is cheating against them. Now, granted, the last time I looked, there was only about six or seven people in the world who had beaten it, but people still beat it, and they were running challenge runs on the thing.
That's
And
funny.
Wow.
I don't know if you've recently played Contra, but that game is just unfair. It is not
Yes, it
designed
is.
for you to win.
Oh. Dad, Dad was better than me at Contra too. By the way, even though we were playing together, I would always die first.
And personally,
Uh,
I consider mechanics like that just bad game design. But that doesn't change the fact that human tenacity has a way of pushing through that sort of thing.
I went
Yeah, there are a
to it
lot of
when I was
poorly
in
designed games.
high school. I went to a birthday party that was held at a arcade. We were all given tokens, just a few, uh, and you were allowed to play any game in the place until your tokens run out, and then you were any more than that, you would have to come up with your own money. Well, I was never one to take and go to these arcades because it cost money. So I went over to Galaga, dropped a token in, and an hour and a half later, I quit because I had to leave. One token.
I would have gotten bored of the game after an hour and a half.
Yeah, Galaga,
Galaga
Galaga
isn't
doesn't
that
have a good
engaging.
loop.
That shows you the tenacity of my generation.
It's like I Pac-Man. It's just boring.
I see.
Pac-Man
I've
no
rolled
real
Pac-Man.
gameplay.
Pac-Man is very, very intriguing after you just figure out the patterns and before you master them.
Well,
Once
see,
you're
I
at the
took
point
and
where
rolled
you
Pac-Man.
actually legitimately know how to play, but you haven't mastered it yet, that is when a game is at its most interesting.
Yes, that's true. Now, I
Which is why
quit Frogger because I got bored with it.
Yeah.
After you roll Frogger 3 or 4 times, why continue?
There really is no point.
Well, anyway, for those of you who are old enough to actually know what we're talking about, congratulations.
Oh, we threw
For
in some
those of you
modern
who are-
references there.
For those who are mine and Josh's age and know of Galaga, Ghouls and Ghosts, Frogger, and
Ghouls
have
and
played
Ghosts was
those
another
games and
unfair
actually
one.
gotten, yeah, that I applaud you though if you're our age and you've actually played those games and know what they are and actually enjoyed them and had some sort of success with Ghouls and Ghosts
Oh,
especially.
you got to be a hardcore gamer.
Here's the one that you have to really be a hardcore classic gamer to understand. Warlords. That's
Easy.
it is really
Which
easy,
one?
but no one. Well, Warlords 3 is probably the best one. Warlords 1 is just too buggy.
Okay, I thought you were talking about
Have you-
Atari Warlords, which is different.
No, no, no. I'm talking about PC progenitor to the grand strategy game Warlords.
Yes.
And while I have
We've
played
put a
that,
lot of effort into that one.
there's a new one out that's
On Linux.
modeled off of it.
I mean, there's the Warlords Battle
Yeah,
Cry
on
games,
Linux.
but and
No,
there's
that
a
was
lot of
actually
games
made
in
by
that.
This is Lord.
There's a lot of games in that genre.
This one, this one's the Lords of War. It's based off of taking the Warlords 1 through 3 and combining them.
I mean, wasn't that basically just what the Heroes of Might and Magic was in its earliest stages?
But yeah, basically.
I'm not
But
sure.
believe it or not,
The Heroes of Might and
believe it or
Magic
not,
had
the
like this
warlords.
grid-based battle system built on top of it, so they had a little bit more interaction than just the
Yeah,
standard ones.
but it still got stale super
It
fast.
did get stale pretty quickly. In fact, the game that I was playing just earlier, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, has a series of CRPGs and then the Heroes of Might and Magic combat system built in together and layered. And it's not bad. It's buggy. A little too ambitious for its own good. It's not bad.
But believe it or not, Warlords Battlecry was made by the creator of Warlords.
This podcast has just changed genres.
It's part of this. It's part of the same. It's part of the same series. Anyways,
We've gone
if you are a video
gamer.
game nerd, if you're a video game nerd, I'm sure you didn't necessarily mind this last part of the discussion. If you cared more about politics, then then I'm sorry.
If you
But
cared more about politics, we
we
can
hope
talk
you
about the
enjoyed it.
political landscape and the differences between Bethesda and EA, and why both of them are basically literally Satan.
But still, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope we'll see you next time.